So it is Tuesday and I thought I would begin what I can only hope is going to turn out to be like a weekly vlog or a weekly reading vlog. And I thought I'd show you some of the books that I am hoping to start in this time, or books that are on sort of my immediate TBR. So last weekend I went to Lincoln with my friends. It was actually my hen do. We had a lot of fun. It was like the most perfect weekend. I actually couldn't ask for anything better, and I did get a little bit of footage from the end of the hen do when one of my friends and I stayed later than everyone else, and we were just wandering around on the Sunday lunchtime. And obviously we ended up in Waterstones. I picked up this book. This is What Am I, a Deer by Polly Barton, and obviously, as you can tell, it is a Fitzcarraldo. I love a Fitzcarraldo. I've read 3 of them so far. I've read Perfection by Vincenzo Latronico, and I've read It Lasts Forever and Then It's Over by Anne DeMarcan, and I've also most recently read The Possession by Annie Ernaux, and I adored all of these books. These were both 5-star reads. I think this was a 4.5 star. And I just go into Fitzcarraldo's with such high expectations because I think as a publisher, they just have this reputation for publishing absolutely astonishing literary fiction and translated fiction. At the minute, I'm really enjoying really character-driven literary fiction that really starts to explore what it means to be human and how, as people and as characters, we interpret the world around us and the shape that we take on because of the society and the world around us and how it affects us and how we affect it, and basically literature that explores the human condition and what it means to be human, very, very character focused. And as far as I'm aware, this will tick all of those boxes. Like, the first line on the blurb is, what does it mean to lose yourself, and is that something you should be aiming for? Later on in the blurb, it goes on about how Polly Barton's formidable debut novel renders the paradoxes of modern life in all of its complexity. Which is just exactly what I want. I want something human, I want something honest, and I want something character-focused. And I think I will find that in a Fitzcarraldo. So this is one that I am definitely considering starting in the next week or 2. And then one that I started literally this morning, I haven't got very far into, is Clarice Lispector's Agua Viva. I am on page 6. So, and it starts on page 3. So technically I'm only 3 pages in. I did read Near to the Wild Heart a few weeks ago, and I did really enjoy it. I found her writing quite tough to read. But I'm hoping this book is so short, it's going to be a bit more accessible. And it seems to be told in like much shorter little chunks of stream of consciousness rather than big walls of text. Being real, I'm only 3 pages in. I'm not quite sure what is going on just yet. But I think this is going to talk about art and writing. And again, in typical Clarice Lispector fashion, it's going to talk about what it means to be human and her narrator sort of coming to terms with her own existence and what it means to exist. So yeah, these are the 2 lit fics that I'm going to prioritise next, I think. That might change, but these are the ones very much on my radar. One thing that I forgot to mention when I did my little reading update earlier was on Friday last week, we went to see The Odyssey in cinemas. There's a little cinema near us. It's an independent one. I think it's independent anyway, and they do these like double recliner seats. And we try to make sure that we go to the cinema at least once a month. And we went to see The Odyssey, and I thought this movie was absolutely brilliant. Have I read the book? No. We went into town and picked this book up yesterday. My fiance bought it for us. I think we're both going to try and read it. But I read Circe a couple of months ago and I absolutely adored it. So I sat there and I spent the whole movie going, where's Circe? Where's Circe? And then I see her and I'm like, yes, there she is. Spending the whole movie waiting for Circe. Yeah, I've now convinced Logan to pick up Circe. So that's very exciting. And he's like 35 pages in. He started that last night. But yeah, we've both picked up this copy of The Odyssey. We've got Emily Wilson's translation because from what I've heard, it's the most approachable. I have always been really intimidated by this book, and just, I think Greek mythology in general, because there's so much of it. Like, there's so much. It doesn't matter how much you learn about ancient Greek mythology, there is always more. And I've just heard so many good things about Emily Wilson's translation. I think out of all of the translations that I would ever pick up, it would be this one.
So I had another book delivered today because I don't seem to be able to stop buying books. This one is a non-fiction, and I have a bit of a weird relationship with non-fiction because I'm always really interested in it, and I always go into it with like really high hopes and like hopes for myself to read it, but I then never do. But yeah, the book that I picked up is Natasha Walker's Feminism for a World on Fire. I'm trying not to be too loud because I know that Logan is asleep. I'm sure a lot of people are like me. You can't help this summer but notice that the world is literally on fire. Like, this could not be a more apt book to pick up. And I think a lot of people, myself included, have sort of been feeling this. I don't even know if I can call it like existential dread, but like this confusion and this uncertainty and this anxiety over what we're doing to our planet and whether there's actually anything that we can do to make it right. I'm fully aware that I live in the UK and I am in a very privileged position in that I can kind of turn a blind eye to what is going on in the rest of the world. I do really try not to. I really try to stay informed, but it's hard to know like what is fact and what is fiction. Yeah, it's hard to kind of know what's what. So yeah, I picked up this book just because it felt so relevant, and I literally think it was released in June. So it really is relevant. A real new release. I know that I'm not the only one with all of these uncertainties and these anxieties, and I know that I am privileged, and I recognise that I'm privileged, and I have it a hell of a lot easier than a lot of other people in the world do. But that alone doesn't alleviate that anxiety.
I read Agua Viva by Clarice Lispector. I think I mentioned this earlier on in the video. And I just have so many mixed thoughts on this. I think, like any other Clarice Lispector writing, it's not easy to read. She's not an easy author to comprehend because her writing style is so different from anything else that I have ever read before. And despite the fact that this novel is literally, 90 odd pages, like it's literally tiny, it still took me a whole week to read. And normally I can read like a 90-page book in a day. So I think that says something, but I am glad I did kind of take my time with it. I don't think this is a novel that can be rushed, despite the fact that it is so short. This book is very philosophical. It isn't your standard novel. There is none of the usual things that you would come to expect with a piece of literature. There is not even a narrator as such. There is no plot. There is no story. There's no characters. There's no narrator. You just have this person that you assume is a woman, and you have the deepest thoughts and her interpretation on existence, life, death, writing and art. She is writing to another person. There is this sort of you figure. So some of the book is in second person, but you'd never ever learn who this you is, only that this is someone that she used to love, like maybe a past lover. But I think because this book exists outside of all of those usual parameters that you would see within a literature or within a novel, your plot, your story, your characters, your narrator, it makes it really, really difficult to get into. But I think once you kind of get into it, or I found that once I did get into it, once I got halfway or past the halfway point, and you just give yourself into it, it becomes a much more enjoyable reading experience. Once you understand that we don't actually need to exist within these confines of this list of checklists that society give us, you can actually quite enjoy this book once you just give over to the fact that this is not going to be a traditional book. I don't think it's possible to read this book without starting to feel philosophical, because she is literally contemplating her own existence and life and death and time, and she reduces every moment down to an is, and she reduces herself as a being down to an am, and she's like, well, I just am. I am. And that can take a hot minute to kind of get used to. But I think reading books like this challenges me, and it kind of makes me realise that I can learn to just give myself into art more, because that's what this book is. This is a form of art, as is all literature. It is a form of creativity, it is a form of expression, and it is a form of art. I think sometimes I forget that about literature because it's not visual as such. I also think that just because I might not necessarily understand the art or necessarily understand the form that the art has taken, that doesn't mean that it is bad art. This isn't an essay, it's not a story, it's not a... I don't even know how. It almost reads... It's not a poem, but it almost reads as one. I think this reads a lot better if you can read it out loud. Some passages, I read them out loud to myself, and I found that I then comprehended it better. This book doesn't follow the traditional lines given to it by what society has said a novel should be. And I think in turn, it kind of makes me realise that I in turn also don't have to squash myself into the lines that society has given me. And I think that is a very powerful thing to realise, just reading a book on one woman's philosophical musings about her existence. I don't think I took the full extent of it though, because I found it so difficult to start off with. And I'm actually going out today. I finished the book, about an hour ago, and I'm gonna go out later on this afternoon. There's a big stately home near me that I want to go and explore. It's not near me, but it's close enough for an afternoon out. I know they've got a cafe, so I think I'm gonna bring this book with me and kind of go through some of the points that I have highlighted, and maybe see that now I've kind of got over the form and used to the form, maybe I can go back to the start of the novel and reread the bits that I maybe didn't grasp. But I think this is a novel that is impossible to grasp. I don't think she wrote this in order for it to be understood. I think you just need to take what you take from it and sort of leave the rest. I think if you're someone that is interested in literature and you're interested in novels that take different forms, if you haven't picked this book up, maybe give it a go, and if you don't like it, then you don't like it. But again, it's something really different, and I can see why people who love literature do really, really enjoy this book. Just a word of caution, it is very pretentious. It's so pretentious, but that doesn't mean it's bad. So